Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for having us here today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank local mana whenua, Ngāti Toa, and Taranaki whānui ki te ōpoko o te ika a Maui for hosting us here and te whanganui a Tara. I'm Helaina Keeley, and along with my Australian colleagues Angela and Ben, we're looking forward to sharing with you this first collaborative project between Auckland Live and Tamaki Makaurau, Bunjil Place in the city of Casey, and Fed Square in Melbourne. We each represent venues with public spaces that feature a central public LED screen. And together we devised a hybrid event, Connecting Worlds with Words, enabling local and international audiences to connect through live stream and physical gatherings. Spoken word was chosen as the art form with the overarching theme of connection. We'd now like to show you a video that was produced by Auckland Live, post-project, describing the event more fully and introducing the key people involved in bringing the concept to life.
Connecting Worlds with Words came about in the lockdowns of 2020. Fed Square, Auckland Live and Bunjil Place were meeting regularly to discuss ways to present content and ideas on each urban screen. Advancements in technology for video conferencing and live streaming were going ahead tenfold, and we thought it was a real opportunity to harness that and create a project together.
It's a really amazing event. I think the first time we've ever seen anything like this happen. Auckland Live, Bunjil Place, and Fed Square all have huge outdoor beautiful screens, right? And the idea was to run a simultaneous poetry event. So to take what is basically like the world's oldest art form, which is storytelling or spoken word, and to use it, because it's one of the greatest things that connects us, right? To our emotions, to people, to our communities, things like that, to share that the oldest art form in the world with some of the most modern technology in the world, especially in a time right now where we feel so incredibly disconnected.
What's really exciting about this event is that we get to use the latest and emerging in broadcasting technology to produce a beautiful hybrid community event across 3 venues, 2 cities, 1 world.
We wanted to create an agile event. We wanted to be able to adapt to gathering limitation, but also be accessible and reach a wide audience.
For Auckland, changes to our response to the pandemic has meant that we've had to move indoors for an event that was meant to be outdoors in Aotea Square, but with a team that's willing to adapt and change, we were able to move into a theatre and then still connect. It's exciting to be part of an event that brings people together, not only just artists and audience, but also technical crew and support people behind the scenes.
We just are doing our last tests between all the venues. We're making sure, of course, that we can talk to Australia, Australia can talk to us, we can see each other. The main hub for this stream is actually done in Australia. So we are streaming to Australia and they gather the inputs from the 3 venues and they are then putting it onto a website where it's there for the world to see.
On the count of 3, everybody just say love. 1, 2, 3. Love! Hopefully we got some friends over in Australia doing that too.
When no one from Auckland Live first got in contact with us about this project, we've been just so incredibly amped about it. And working with the poets and our friends across the ditch in Australia has been a really awesome experience.
I've been lucky enough to be able to be involved in this amazing project with a lot of people who I look up to as artists. So to be able to share space with them is just amazing, and I'm excited to listen to them. I'm excited to get on the mic and speak myself, get inspiration from other people, and just like under these conditions to be able to share space with other people is something that's super exciting again.
Connection is a big thing to me as a poet and as a tangata Māori. My culture does have a big influence with my poetry. I do believe that Ngai Māori are quite natural storytellers. To me, one of my lines that I think perfectly encapsulates how I look at connection is the pōwhiri is the embodiment of connection.
Connection to me is ngafa or whakapapa. It's our ancestry, the layers that we build on top of each other and that we stand on, because we're giants standing on the shoulders of giants.
I've never felt more kind of disconnected at times from those that are most close to me. So I think that this theme around connection is just really important at the time that we're living in right now. And being able to make these connections globally in this way has just been such a beautiful thing.
I think it brings brings about individual and community experience. And I feel like listeners or people viewing can tap in and say like, hey, I know what that's like. I can feel that, I can relate. And I feel like there's so many stories in the world.
The notion of connection has grown through the event with the poets, with the collective, with the venues, and we hope that the audience get a glimpse of that.
Everybody give yourselves a round of applause, even if I can't hear you out there in Australia. Give it up. There we are, yo!
Yay. Okay, so Connecting Worlds with Words was born out of the impact of COVID-19. During the lockdowns, Bunjil Place, Fed Square and Auckland Live were having regular online meetings to share programming, initiatives and ideas. We were aware of the impact that lockdowns were having on our audiences, our communities and their ability to connect and engage. More broadly across lockdowns were causing feelings of isolation, emptiness and disconnection. However, large organisations such as our own were able to support grassroots organisations in this challenging and difficult time. There was a redefinition of public space in the digital environment. When the lockdowns began to ease, there were still heavy restrictions on audience capacity as capacity limits were put in place. Outdoor spaces were deemed as safer places for people to gather. So that was quite good for our project. But even when the lockdowns were beginning to ease, there were still travel restrictions in place. And the idea to connect physically and connect physical spaces through online connection was really quite exciting to us. We wanted to bring together digital public space with a physical public space while transgressing borders and limitations.
Yes, so obviously during this time there was increased viewership across all streaming services. I know at that point I signed up to probably about 100 streaming services at that time. But it also actually enabled us to work more in this domain, I think really, and so from that we asked ourselves, how can we as organizations help and support grassroots collectives during this time? And so obviously through that, all of these grassroots organizations were obviously using Twitch, YouTube Live, Facebook Live to actually, in their very kind of lo-fi immediate way, to actually keep in contact with everyone and still actually produce these events. And through that, through that, broadcasting technology software actually became more accessible, whether that be through OBS, vMix, which then in turn allowed more grassroots and also as well larger arts organizations to help develop these kinds of initiatives. And then also as well from the distribution perspective, there were already readily available platforms, whether it be, as I said, Vimeo or Facebook or as well as also a lot of content delivery networks.
Spoken word was chosen for its resonance with local communities and its accessibility as an art form that draws on hip-hop, rap and theatre to address issues of justice, politics and community. Auckland Live already had a strong relationship with Action Education, which is an arts-based youth development organisation based in Tāmaki Makaurau, and we knew that they had an appetite and an enthusiasm to push boundaries. We wanted to work with an art form that could be easily embraced by people of all cultures. And from a public realm programming perspective, spoken word fitted that brief beautifully. Auckland Live also had a focus on supporting art forms that, in our view, receive less funding support and less public exposure, and spoken word fell into that category. It transpired that each of the three partners had a relationship with a passionate local spoken word community, and this quickly became the common denominator between us as the most appropriate art form to lean into for the project.
Yes, and so obviously this photo is taken from one of our recent candlelight concerts during our summer program. So this is Fed Square. Fed Square is the gateway to the Melbourne Arts Precinct, as well as also we are Melbourne's we're Melbourne's public square in its civic, cultural and community, as well as also we pride ourselves on being the heart of the Melbourne CBD.
This is Bunjil Place. Don't worry, people do go to Bunjil Place. This is taken. So this shot really just shows the screen and the facade of the building as well. So it's an award-winning design by FJMT Architects, and it was built around 7 years ago. And the building itself is based on Bunjil, the eagle, the indigenous storytelling, the creator. The precinct itself is one of the most ambitious arts and cultural development projects in Australia in the past decade, providing world-class arts experiences for the local community and its visitors. So we have a large LED outdoor screen, we have an 800-seat theatre, a black box studio, function centre and 3-storey library, and also council offices.
And finally, Auckland Live is Aotearoa New Zealand's largest live performance platform, responsible for managing and programming a range of iconic venues and public spaces across the city. Launched in January 2019, the Auckland Live digital stage was a large-scale mobile digital screen located in Aotea Square in the centre of the city, showcasing local and international live arts and entertainment content on a larger-than-life LED screen. The screen was intended to champion the arts in the heart of the city, while providing a vibrant, all-ages backdrop for anyone relaxing in or passing through Aotea Square, Auckland's largest and most central public space. And I want to acknowledge here my colleague Nolwenn Lucia, who was our digital curator at the time and led all of our programming work for the Auckland Live digital stage. As a result, Nolwenn, who is here today, led our involvement in this project. So all of what I'm telling you really should be coming from her. It just happens that she now belongs to another fantastic organisation.
Okay, so the project had to obviously work with various different departments across the 3 organisations, and one of the key departments to its success was developing the branding and marketing with our marketing teams. The project producers, as well as the spoken word collectives, were really involved in the process. The look and feel of the campaign was a collaboration between the 3 venues, and we were fortunate enough to have the very talented Amanda Stokely from Fed Square to lead the branding design. She responded to briefing prompts of urban culture, personal stories, identity, and of course incorporating the 3 venues. So we worked through the designs, and effectively though, when we brought in the poets for their feedback, they liked the second design because it incorporated talking marks, envisaging spoken word. Across all of the campaigns, we used social media, EDMs, and Auckland Live had the initiative to actually interview the poets, which was really great content, which was then pushed out through all of the social media channels. Oh, it's back to me, sorry. So the spoken word collectives came together, and they were a vital role in the project. At the heart of the project are the artists. So Auckland Live worked with Action Education. Bunjil Place worked with Littlefoot & Co., who had a monthly slam event at our venue. And Fed Square worked with Melbourne Spoken Word. We developed an online workshop, monthly workshop, which was led by Action Education. And so that was to support the poets to create a collective video work. And this really created a great opportunity for the poets to get to know each other and form relationships beyond physical interaction. And to this day, they're still in touch, and we're really proud of their contribution to the project.
So as I mentioned, there was I think streaming, or at least the notion of streaming, had actually developed incredibly rapidly. Obviously, there was a lot of user-generated content being made at that time, as well as also a lot of arts organisations that that were quickly pivoting to a lot of those online kind of platforms, whether that be, as I said, Twitch, YouTube, or even actually something like Vimeo, which is a platform that Sydney Opera House and the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra use as their current on-demand platform as well. For this event for us, we actually used one that was called Darkcast, which is more of your content or cloud kind of delivery service. And the reason why we went with Darkcast was actually to ensure that the artists involved in this retained their own intellectual property of their performances, which was very, very important for them to really kind of keep that sense of ownership. And the other thing that also using Darkcast allowed us to do was to not geo-block the live stream worldwide. So when this event was on, it was obviously shown on all 3 screens, as well as also through a website. And so from that, we had just over 1,000 views across, which was a great kind of success. And so in terms of the tech team, so actually from the production standpoint, we actually use a visual mixing software called vMix, and within that using its core functionality as a platform to connect each site. Fed Square, we acted as the main kind of like control house for all 3 sites, in which Auckland, Bunjil were connected to us, and we would send feeds back to them. And then, as I said, we will then create a separate final broadcast feed that was the one being shown worldwide. With our local AV teams, I think that they were able to also kind of keep it relatively simplified, with obviously the use of a lot of HDMI cables and audio. I think Dante was actually used across the site, so obviously turning analog audio into its own IP streams. That would then obviously feed into the general AV infrastructure. And so I think the trickiest part of all of this was to ensuring that we had good audio operators who can actually duck feeds to avoid any kind of feedback across the 3 sites, as well as also on our live stream. We used Unity communications to be able to talk to each other in real time between each tech teams to ensure that there was a constant uninterrupted flow of communication. And as I said, we had just over 1,000 kind of views, and this would obviously range from views from Australia, Canada, UK, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand, and the States.
We just wanted to share a couple of words about how we acknowledge tikanga or cultural protocols, because the team spent a lot of time discussing how to appropriately do this from and between the 2 countries while in a live online environment. With expert guidance and advice from Auckland Live's Arataki Toi Māori Kura Te Ua, and working closely with Action Education, it was agreed that the event would be opened by the collective in Aotearoa, New Zealand, with one of the poets, Māori artist Manaia Tūwharihoani, who you can see in the top left corner there, leading a karakia or a prayer to open and close the online event. This was agreed to be the best way to ensure the Indigenous artists from each of the 3 cities, and indeed any of the Indigenous audience observers online, could experience the event in a safe and held way.
So coordinating the live event across the venues with distinct infrastructures presented some challenges, especially as each venue had to synchronise under unpredictable conditions. In the final planning stages, Auckland plunged into lockdown, preventing any outdoor public performances. We considered postponing, but that would have been more precarious with our competing schedules and programming teams. So Auckland team managed to secure the Herald Theatre and as the performance venue, and they had just a limited capacity of only 40 people were able to attend. So we had to have a coordinated production schedule across the 3 venues, and that had to align with technical elements and manage event logistics, including stage management, AV production, and live streaming as well. So we feel that connecting worlds with words did achieve to bridge the gap between the online and the physical space in a kind of a hybrid format. The project connected 12 poets, 3 spoken word collectives, 3 arts venues with public urban screens, 27 operational staff, and just around 1,000 audience members. The project was born out of the pandemic's constraints, exemplifies how technology can bring together across distances, sparking the imagination for future cities built on connection. Much of the social online connection today grew out of the online culture that developed through the COVID lockdowns. Would it still be impactful today? Now we're able to freely travel between countries, connect in person. We don't have imposed restrictions as we did throughout COVID. But there are other pressures that limit our movement, such as inflation, cost of living, climate crisis. So there are still impacting factors.
The team identified a range of learnings and things that could be done better next time post-event, but sadly, due to external factors outside of our control, the project wasn't continued. Much of these were the result of the continuing impact of the pandemic, including significant organisational restructures and program budget cuts. As we started to reopen for public engagement and people returned to public spaces, the focus quickly turned to reducing the amount of digital events to enable the development of programs that would give people reasons to return to live and in-person events. We learnt that the skills of live performance technicians don't necessarily easily translate to delivering broadcast and digital events. Each are a specialist skill set, and those technicians that love and choose to work across both platforms are unicorns. And in our particular experience at Auckland Live, once our many venues were back up and running, we no longer had the capacity or the resources to deliver live, online and hybrid events any further. We simply did not and still do not have the capacity to deliver both, and so have had to necessarily focus solely on live events as a priority. Should this change in the future, however, we would love to reignite the connections and continue with a new iteration of the project.
So as producers, we are very dependent on our collaborators, whether it be other arts organisations, partners, artists and things like that, and we would obviously need this support to continue. I think for Fed Square, we did actually do another style of this hybrid event between ourselves and Bunjil Place on a local music event that was called Garage Band, in which we had live multiple bands across both our sites. That was also broadcasted as well. And again, I think similarly, just after COVID, I think for us the real kind of shift was obviously trying to bring people back to Fed Square, much more kind of live in-person events and very much kind of just to reignite like live in-person connection. And as I'm very much still kind of echoing that we would obviously love to try this event again, given the opportunity. And I think that ends our presentation. So I would like to thank everyone for obviously joining us this afternoon. And yeah, any questions?
Thank you so much for that. My phone has decided to go to sleep, but hopefully I can see if we have any questions that have come through on the Slido. Sorry, it's just refreshing. And after all that, there are no questions. Does anyone in the audience? Okay, let me walk over to you and give you the mic so that way we can hear it well for the recording.
Hey, thanks very much for the presentation. I just wondered, in terms of how you crossed over to each location, would like one poet perform in Auckland and then you'd cross to Melbourne and back, or how did it work?
Yes, so what we had was, I think in general, we had 3 MCs across across each site, and then what we would do, pretty much what you said, like we would then kind of like cut from, I think we'd start at Auckland, then we would go to, pardon, sorry?
Started at Bunjil.
Apologies. We started at Bunjil Place, and then we cut to Auckland, and then Fed Square, and then and then our MCs took over, and then we did a similar pattern like again. So, which it was really interesting to see, at least in Fed Square, I think, just also kind of just also looking at the public's reaction, like watching this in the square and that whole kind of experience. Whereas I think that it was really lovely to see everyone still being engaged in terms of obviously what was happening on the main stage, and then and then obviously what was happening on the screen for, you know, at Bunjil Place in Auckland as well. And I think by doing that, we kept it relatively simple. We weren't trying to do like really kind of complicated editing switches or things like that, which could also lead into unforeseen problems. And I think that that's also what helped the event to be a really great success.
Yeah, we had a. I'll just add to that. We had, like I said, the run sheet and the production schedule. So, that really helped to keep us in line with who's going next and who's going when. But one of the beautiful things that sort of eventuated on the day was the venues being able to talk to each other over the screen. So that was really quite cool. And the poets having built that rapport through the project by doing the video piece together, they were able to like talk freely between the venues, which was kind of cool too.
Thank you all so much. Please join me in giving our presenters one last round of applause.